Well, let's return now to the United States, where the second Democratic presidential nomination televised debate has taken place. We're going to get some more on it now with CNN reporter Karen Kafer, who joins me live from Miami. Karen, thanks again for your time. We heard that some of the candidates urged Joe Biden to drop out. It doesn't sound like he'll be answering those calls at this stage.
No, not really. And Stacey, this was a much feistier debate than we saw on the stage last night. The candidates really got to it right away, perhaps an indication that they tuned in last night and wanted things to move at a faster pace. They also had a clearer frontrunner to really take aim at, and that question of surrounding Joe Biden as to whether he should pass the torch is the phrase that Eric Swalwell, the congressman from California, coined in talking about the generational aspects of being a leader and where the Democratic Party should be going. Eric Swalwell is in his 30s. Pete Buttigieg, another candidate on that stage, also in his 30s, really reflecting this generational divide that takes place within the Democratic Party. Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders in their 70s, the front runners at center stage tonight, really a striking contrast with people like Buttigieg and Swalwell. So a feisty debate early on and really indicative of a lot of the questions that the Democrats are going to have to answer before they have their nominees, Stacey.
Yesterday we saw immigration and national security dominate the first debate. What were the big issues today?
Well, a lot of the topics were largely the same: healthcare, the economy, also those questions of national security, and a little bit more into foreign policy, and especially given the recent tensions between the U.S. and Iran. So covering a lot of ground. The idea of these Democratic debates was not just to contrast the differences between the Democratic Party and Republicans, the Democratic Party and President Trump, which the candidates tonight seem to do a little bit more than last night. It's designed to really show the contrasts and the differences between these Democratic candidates. And what we are starting to see, that not only is there that generational difference, but there's also a difference of opinion on how to approach some issues that are very important to voters in this primary campaign. Chiefly among them, really, health care. They also delved into immigration. And again, we're really trying to draw a contrast with what their policies would be as president and what the current administration is doing right now. As for the front runner, Joe Biden, that is a tactic that he came into this debate hoping to adhere to, striking differences between himself and President Trump, really trying to carry himself as the front runner and really the presumptive nominee, maybe, that would be challenging Donald Trump next November. But a lot of candidates had other ideas, particularly Kamala Harris, who challenged Biden on a number of things, most poignantly an exchange that took place over race, with Kamala Harris reflecting her experiences as a black woman in America and against some of the comments that Joe Biden has made recently. He was criticized for making these comments at a fundraiser recently in which he talked about the loss of civility in Washington and how when he came to Washington, he had to find ways to work together even with segregationist senators. That has not been taken well by a lot of members of the party, and Kamala Harris challenged him on that tonight.
It seemed like Bernie Sanders was also in the firing line for some of the other candidates. He was challenged on socialism and his affiliation with the Democratic Socialists of America.
And this was a very different position for Bernie Sanders to be in than he was in 2016. This is what happens when you are the front runner or one of the front runners or in the top tier of candidates in a presidential race. You are asked tough questions by other candidates and the moderators about your policies, really challenged a little bit more. Bernie Sanders, of course, took Hillary Clinton all the way to the final primaries in 2016, has been trying to pick up and run on that again. And so you saw him center stage with Joe Biden tonight. His goal was to kind of reflect that difference between his progressive policies and where he'd like the party to go, and Joe Biden, who's seen as more of an establishment candidate. But that contrast was drawn in other places as well, again, across the generational divide, across the ideological divide. So a lot of differences among these candidates. It'll be interesting to see how the polls shift, if at all, after this first round of debates, Stacey.
Always watching the polls, Karen. Thank you very much for that.